And welcome back, everybody, to Summer with the Stars, episode 13. That's right, we're getting closer to the start of the regular season. And this week I am happy to be joined by another familiar face and defenseman Cameron Gaunce. And Cameron, thanks so much for joining us today. I know that you've been spending a lot of time up in Canada getting yourself ready for the start of the season, but it has to feel as though as we now have the AHL schedule out and NHL training camp is only a couple of weeks away, has to feel like summer's almost over for you.
It definitely does. At the start of the summer, you look at the couple months you have, you think you have all the time in the world. But as it comes down to crunch time here, you really start to realize how little time you actually had at home. And now it's just at the point where you're sick of the gym and you want to start playing games.
Now, you were a restricted free agent this summer and signed with the Dallas Stars. It was your first real contract negotiation with your new team. On June 24th, they officially announced that. How did that process go for you? Because this was your first really negotiating since you were signing your entry-level contract with Colorado.
Yeah, well, initially I wasn't sure what was going to happen with it because, again, as you said, it's the first time I'm going through it. And with the GM in Mr. Nill, who I'm kind of unfamiliar with, I didn't really know how it was going to go. I had only had one conversation with him, so I wasn't really sure how it was going to go or what to even expect out of in terms of figures. So it was definitely a learning experience. There wasn't much in terms of negotiating going on. We kind of knew with the season I had last year where I'd be at. So I think both sides were able to walk away thinking that they got what they wanted.
Overall, were you fairly pleased with how he handled that? I mean, it has to be weird to go through, and we'll talk a little bit about the trade in a minute, but to be traded for by one NHL GM and Joe Nieuwendyk, and by the time the season ends, which wasn't that much longer, a totally new GM and Jim Nill has the reins for the Dallas Stars. So you went through two very strange circumstances in a very jam-packed window.
Actually, it's the second time that's happened to me. When I was drafted by Colorado, François Giguère drafted me, and then the next year he was fired, and Greg Sherman was brought in. So, yet again, this time the GM that brings me in is let go. So I don't know if that's a good thing for the GMs that take me, but it's a good situation, and there's good and there's bad about both of them. The good is that with Jim Nill being there, it's a fresh start for him. He has yet to really form too many opinions on players, which means that when I go into camp, I have a fresh start, and I think that's exactly what I need and exactly what I'm looking forward to. I'm able to come in, give a first impression on him, and really put my best foot forward. Also, it would be nice to have a guy like Joe Nieuwendyk, who had traded for me, still be around, but at the same time, I feel like this just gives me an opportunity to start fresh.
Well, as you well know, they did not completely clear house up in Dallas, and people like Les Jackson and Scott White are still very much involved in the day-to-day hockey operations, along with Jim Nill and some of the people that he's brought in. So do you feel as though when you went through all this, it wasn't just a bunch of fresh faces, but some of the people that were involved in the decision to make the trade to bring you to the Dallas Stars organization were still there and still pulling for you?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Mr. Jackson, I talked with him a bit during my draft year as well, and so I know that he's familiar with me and the type of game I play. And Mr. White, I got to know from being in Texas, and he was very involved with negotiations as well. And so I knew both of them. I know they knew me as a person, which is also a big part of signing a contract when you're not maybe a guy who's going to be making $5-6 million a year. I think the personality and how you mesh in with the team really is important. So knowing that they know who I am as a person and as a player, I think was a big part of it.
I'm glad you brought that up because it perfectly segues into the thought of you had to bond with a new team after an April 2nd trade, which means that there were only about a couple of weeks of regular season games before the playoffs, and the team, the Texas Stars, having had a very strong season to that point and going into the stretch run knowing they were going to be in the playoffs, had a pretty strong core of people. How challenging was that for you? Because you'd been with the same pro organization in the Avalanche with, Colorado and Lake Erie for the entirety of your career as a pro up to that point, to have to now get to know a whole new group of people and to do so in a really, really short amount of time.
Well, it was tough, obviously getting traded, having to come into this team. I was very excited because it meant right away playoffs. But like you said, they had a strong team there, and the last thing I wanted to do was ruffle any feathers by coming in and taking spot away from a guy or upset the team chemistry. So I kind of just kept my head down and worked hard for the first little bit. Try to be seen and not heard around the room. So I think once I was kind of able to let my personality show through a bit, I think I was able to fit in well with the guys. It also really helped having a guy like Luke Gazik around, who I knew previously. He helped me out exponentially by not only the first day coming and picking me up and introduced me to a bunch of a bunch of our teammates at a dinner, but also like lending me his car before I was able to rent one, and kind of showing me a few things here and there, introducing me to people. That really helped. And just I think guys on the team seeing that someone who they know and they're friends with sees me as a friend, I think it kind of makes it easier for them to kind of open themselves up in a way to me. So I think that really helped.
Now, I know that Luke Gazik is going to be literally fighting, perhaps, for a spot with the Dallas Stars, as are you and everybody else going to training camp in a couple of weeks in Fort Worth, as they hold a special location camp, not at their normal Frisco, Texas headquarters. But why, and we've heard players throughout the summer, even when unprompted, talk about the sort of extra stuff that Luke Gazdic brings to the team on the ice, off the ice, in the dressing room, in the community, bonding with the team. And I've heard lots of answers, but from you, why is he such an important part to a team, and why can he make a team turn into a championship caliber team?
I think off the ice, what Luke brings to the team is just someone who is able to bring everyone together. He's someone who talks to everybody in the room, makes everyone feel welcome, and he wears his emotions on his sleeve, so you know when he is, if something's not going well, he'll say it. If something's going well, he's more than happy to compliment someone on the team and show a positive light. And I think Luke does a great job of making sure, like I said before, everyone feels included, which is a big part about a hockey team, because hockey teams that I've been around or I've heard about sometimes turn into kind of cliques, where there's a couple groups of guys who hang out, a couple groups of guys who don't. So I think what Luke's able to do is kind of bring everyone together, and that's very big for a hockey team and that chemistry.
Now, you were one of the guys, and you and I talked about this after the trade, and you saw the Texas Stars a couple of months. It was about a month and a half before the trade. It was mid-February when Texas went up to Cleveland and played against Lake Erie in a back-to-back weekend. What was it like? I mean, it wasn't like being traded to the Chicago Wolves or Milwaukee that you probably play a dozen times a year in that scenario. But what was it like to get traded to a team that A, was in first place, and B, you had seen relatively recently, and so you had played against everyone. Everybody was familiar with who you were, even if you didn't know people well.
Yeah, well, coming to a first place team, you know something's going right there. And you automatically know that they're playing well. You have to respect the way they do it. And on top of all that, I've heard from everybody, and I learned firsthand that the coaching staff there is second to none. With Willie and with Doug Lidster, they do such a good job of communicating to the players and helping them out and teaching. That's the first thing you notice. And then the other thing that playing them recently, what we kind of learned in Lake Erie when I was there, is that this team plays the way we wanted to play. And we did play from time to time. We weren't able to do consistently, whereas Texas was. They played with speed, and they were able to get pucks behind defensemen. And I think that was the way we wanted to play in Lake Erie, with a lot of speed and up-tempo type of game. And Texas, we were really able to do that late in the year. And when they had all the success at the start of the season and midway through, was because they're always on top of you and they move the puck very quickly.
It maybe seemed an obvious decision from the coaching staff and the front office for Dallas and for the Texas Stars to put you with Kevin Connaughton. You guys seem to complement each other well with the style of games that you both play, but also you're both traded during the deadline move, and you're both were trying to establish that bond that you and I were talking about with the new team. Being a couple of, if you want to call them outsiders, trying to get comfortable quickly, did that help to share the whole experience of moving abruptly to Texas, being a lot farther away from where you had been used to being, and both you guys were getting traded from your first pro organizations to your second. You were both defensemen. You played together. Was that helpful to have somebody going through it almost simultaneously as you were?
Yeah, I think so. Kevin, I roomed with actually a couple of my close friends when he was in Chicago and when he was in Manitoba before that. So I kind of knew him through other people. And then also my brother being part of the Vancouver organization. Again, I'd heard a couple things through there. So I kind of knew a bit about him as a person, and then meeting him, and we kind of lived together at the hotel and then worked together on the team. I think by going with someone new and a new D partner, there's no preconceived notions, and we were both kind of learning as it went on. So whatever he learned, I also learned at the same time. There wasn't going to be the case on the ice where he would make a play, and then I wouldn't know what he was doing, and then we'd come to the bench, and it would almost be well, how come you didn't understand that? There was none of that because we were learning all the same things together. So I think that really helped. And again, like you said, I felt our games complemented each other well. He's a very offensive, very skilled player, and I tend to shade a bit more towards the defensive side of the puck. So I think we were able to complement each other well in that sense.
Plus, he probably made you feel a little bit better because although you both were uprooted very quickly as the trade went down and you had to report to your new team in Texas right away, you at least had a little bit more support structure with your family back in Toronto going out to Cleveland to kind of pack things up and settle your affairs as you were down here. I think we went towards Milwaukee and right before the playoffs started in late April, and it had been almost a month since Kevin had opened his refrigerator in his Chicago apartment, and he was working, I think, maybe on a pair of jeans and a couple pairs of shorts. Didn't exactly have his full wardrobe for a while.
Yeah, I was actually, unfortunate for me, I got traded when I was in my hometown, and we were on the road in Toronto, and I got traded. So, of course, all I had was winter attire. And going to Texas, our first game was, I believe, in San Antonio, or our first game was at home. So it was, I didn't exactly have the right outfit, but at the same time, being only 5 hours away from where I was playing in Cleveland, my hometown, my girlfriend was gracious enough to go down with both my mom and her mom at different times to kind of pack up our apartment and send me out some of the clothes that I needed, ship them out to me. So I got lucky in that sense that I got a good support staff, as you said.
You're from Ontario. You played in the OHL in Mississauga, then Cleveland, as you mentioned, not that far away. It's driving distance. Other than your short stint in Colorado when you played, double-digit games in the NHL with the Avalanche a couple of years ago, you haven't been this far from home as you were when you came to Texas. Is that a bit of an adjustment for you? I mean, I know it's exciting to be playing A, in pro hockey, and B, to be fighting for a chance to make an NHL roster, but you definitely have the added bonus of having to be a lot farther from your family.
Yeah, again, it's another situation that's kind of bittersweet. You're happy in the sense that you're kind of get to be a bit more independent than you maybe normally would be. You get to kind of see how you act and see how you're able to live away from them without being able to lean on them quite as much. But at the same time, it's not as good in the sense that they can't come down on a whim. They can't just come down and drive down for the weekend and go back. It has to be a flight, it has to be planned out. And being someone who's very close with their family is kind of tough because, of course, you want to see them. But at the same time, everyone understands the situation I'm in, and we're all able to get through it.
Knowing that, did you do anything this summer, or have you sort of consciously tried to do a few more things maybe than you ordinarily would, knowing that, hey, in a couple of months I'm going to be down in Texas and this isn't going to be an everyday occurrence?
Yeah, I kind of went a couple golfing outings, and instead of going golfing or instead of going away for a weekend, I kind of try to make sure I was seeing I live with my parents, so I see them enough. But, seeing my sister and seeing my nephew, spending time with a couple of my friends who go away as well, who won't be able to come down during the season, and so yeah, stuff like that. I kind of made sure to do a bit more this summer than in years past.
Now, you mentioned your brother before. You have a younger brother, Brendan, who was drafted, and I'm sure there's sibling rivalry there, but he drafted higher than you were. Not in the same draft, of course, but in 2012, so 2 drafts ago, he taken in the first round by Vancouver. Now, you were taking the second round. That's nothing to sneeze at. But how exciting was it for him and for you and the whole family that he got picked in the first round of the NHL draft? That's a really exciting proposition.
Oh yeah, it was great. I feel like I still to this day I feel more excitement and more joy when he is able to achieve something than when I do. Um, so like in case in point at the draft, we were all very excited for him. Of course, we'd heard different things of when he was get drafted. Like there's a possibility Dallas was going to take him at 12. I think there's 13 there where they ended up taking Faxa. But there's a possibility it might be to him. Buffalo might. So a couple teams were debating it, and we hadn't actually heard anything about Vancouver. So when a couple to Boston had made their pick at, I think it was 24, we were kind of getting nervous that maybe he wasn't going to be picked in the first round. So when he was picked by Vancouver, there was, I think, as much excitement as there was relief in that he got drafted, and everyone didn't bring a second day's worth of nice clothes to go to the second day of the draft. So I think that was a big relief for everyone as well.
For you, you say you almost are more excited when he does things. You made it deep in the playoffs in your OHL career. You guys, your last year of juniors, you went to the Eastern Conference Finals and then lost with Mississauga. You lost to the Barrie Colts in 5 games. He had a pretty deep run playing in the OHL with Belleville last year. Are you as nervous and anxious, or more so, when you see his team making that run than you were when you were playing?
Definitely more so, because when it's I have control over it. I'm playing the game. I have an impact on the game. Of course, you're nervous before your own game, but not nearly as nervous as when you're watching. Because when you're watching, you don't have any control over it. You're helpless, so you can tell the person all you want, but they're the ones who have to go out and do it. So watching, and I was watching, I believe I was out in Texas when it was going on, so it was tough to watch. I couldn't watch a couple games, but yeah, definitely more nerve-wracking when it's him playing than when I play.
What was it like when the two of you growing up? Because there are a few years between you, but still, I'm sure at some point there was definitely, whether it be a backyard competition or find the local outdoor rink, but did you have a mutual sense, because you are separated by a couple of years? You weren't on the same teams and necessarily playing the same level, but did you share a lot of hockey growing up together?
We shared mainly road hockey. We didn't play much on the ice together. Only a couple of years ago was the first time we really started practicing together as well, just because of the age difference. But we participated in every sport possible against each other, really. And due to our competitive nature, everything turned into very heated competition. So yeah, mainly it was road hockey.
Can you see? I mean, he's not that far away, and I'm sure you are A, excited, and B, starting to feel older because of this. As I am every time I go through a season and realize that the newest rookies coming in are that much younger than I am. But you look at the potential, like Riley Smith did last year with the Texas Stars, playing against his older brother in the AHL first during the lockout, and then they faced each other in the NHL. Would that be kind of a real exciting dream to play either with or against him in pro hockey, especially the NHL, or would that be almost nerve-wracking to face him in that scenario?
I feel like for me, it wouldn't be as big of a deal. I think looking back on it, it would be a huge deal. Hindsight and being able to kind of remove yourself from the moment. But I think at the time it wouldn't be much for me. I think it'd be a nightmare for my parents instead of a dream. Just because having to, they know at the end of the night they're gonna have to deal with one of us being pissed off at the other. So I think it'd be more of a nightmare for them. But again, it's something where when we get a bit older and we're able to take ourselves away from the moment and really think about what we're able to accomplish, I think then it'll be big. But at the time, I think it'll just be like every other game.
I mentioned the OHL playoffs for both you and your brother, and the reason is that you didn't experience pro playoff action until this year with Texas. But that being said, you did have a deep run in your last year juniors. Do you think that was really beneficial? I mean, they always talk about going through the experience of a long playoff run, getting deep into the postseason, and what that can do for a player's development and the experience it brings. Was that a pretty beneficial thing, even though the next couple of seasons playing with Lake Erie, you didn't have that experience?
Oh, yeah, I think it was very big. You kind of notice a bit about your energy systems, type of things that you might you lose during the season that you need to make sure you're working on. But also, you kind of see the type of player you are when it's a very pressure-filled moment. You really kind of notice if you're the type of person that wilts away from it or steps up during it. And I feel like both my brother and I were able to kind of reveal to ourselves and to everybody else that when it comes to a pressure-packed moment or something like that, we tend to step up and we're able to play our best.
What about the run with the Texas Stars this last year? I mean, obviously, you said how exciting it was to come to a first-place team, to play in the system that you quickly adapted to, and then you go and face the Milwaukee Admirals, a team that you're probably extremely familiar with playing Lake Erie, and I would imagine as much as you were excited, it was very valuable to get those first Calder Cup playoff games in.
Oh, absolutely. Playing in those games really brought excitement to a whole other level, knowing that every game meant a whole lot more than usual. It really kind of added to it. I think that was something that I really thrived on. I felt like I played well in the playoffs. Of course, against Oklahoma City, there's a lot of things we'd like to do differently, but it's also a great learning experience for a lot of us being younger guys, and we're able to move forward with.
Going back to your NHL days, and I'm saying this making it sound like you spent years. Obviously, I would imagine you're pretty proud of your first stint in the NHL with Colorado. You made your NHL debut on February 12th, 2011 at Nashville. That had to be an extremely fun thing. But then 4 days later, you score your first NHL goal against Marc-Andre Fleury at the Pittsburgh Penguins. Which was more exciting, getting that first NHL game in or scoring that first goal?
I think the first game, the goal, I tell you the truth, I didn't even know I'd scored at the time. I thought it was tipped in. So it wasn't that much excitement. But I think the first game kind of, I didn't really kick in until about midway through the first period what was actually going on. It was also my first game. The cool thing was it was actually Peter Forsberg's last game. He made a 2-game return where he played a back-to-back in Columbus and Nashville. So his last game was my first, which was pretty cool. Meeting him and meeting a couple of the other guys who had seen the training camp but never played with was a very cool experience for me. And it was also Mike Fisher's first game in Nashville. So almost every whistle, they would show Carrie Underwood on the screen, and the place would be cheering from whistle to whistle.
Tell me a little bit about I can't get over the Carrie Underwood thing. I mean, talk about a very memorable first NHL game. You're already nervous. I'm sure you're incredibly thrilled. I would imagine you probably had some family in the audience, and then to have all this extra going around, did it just add to the kind of glitz and glamour of your NHL debut?
I think it did. Again, you try to block those things out during the game, but at the same time, it's hard not to. My family wasn't able to make it that game because I was actually called up from morning skate with Cleveland, so there wasn't enough time to notify anybody. But it definitely added to it. Seeing how intense the crowd is in Nashville, when being a guy from Toronto, you don't get as much coverage of the Nashville games as you do Toronto or other Canadian teams. So you're not really aware of it. So I guess you can say I was a bit ignorant to it. So going out there and really recognizing the hotbed that Nashville really is for hockey was an eye-opening experience for me.
You had a great game statistically, and I'm sure you were pleased with how you played with Texas on April 14th this past year. And if you don't remember the date, it was at San Antonio, and you tied 2 single-game franchise records for the Stars. You had 4 assists, and you had a +5 rating. And the 2 records were for most assists and most points in a game, both being 4 in a rather one-sided route of the Rampage. Now, I know it was only one game, but being the fact that it was only your 4th or 5th game with the Texas Stars, it probably didn't hurt to go out and have a performance like that to help bond you with that group.
Definitely. I kind of, with Texas and playing with Connaughton, I kind of assumed a defensive role in the team, and I really relish it. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoy it. I think that's the type of game I have to play to be successful, but being able to show that I am able to contribute offensively is always nice. Kind of showing some of the guys who maybe had only seen me kill penalties or make defensive zone plays or battle along the board, something along those lines. Kind of reveal that part of my game. I think
was able to help me a lot in terms of, as you said, teammates and stuff like that.
This is your going into your 4th year as a pro. Over the course of the first 3 years and now into year 4, do you have any changes to your preparations in the summer? Any different approaches that you weren't doing either last year or the first couple of years as your pro?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Every year, I'm not in the NHL. It means I'm doing something. I'm not doing something, or I'm doing something wrong in my training. So I constantly try to look at weaknesses in my game and find them and work on them. Obviously, you work on your strengths as well, but there's a reason why I'm not in the NHL, so I need to find that and kind of work on it. I feel like this summer I was able to key in a couple things, and I feel like it's going to make me stronger as a player.
Saw some comments about some prospects from the Dallas Stars and from Les Jackson, who we talked about earlier, and he mentioned some things about some of the young guys in the organization and where they might be, and said that you're real close, but you might have a few things to work on. It kind of seems as though you're very aware that you're not that far away, but you still want to tweak a little bit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm not that far away, but that also means I'm not there. So there's something I need to work on. I feel like with the coaching staff that's in Texas, if I happen to get sent down, it's a group that literally wants the best for everybody there, is able to help. I feel like some of the things that Doug is able to teach me, Mr. Litzer is able to teach me, and Willie are able to teach me are things that I don't know, and I think can really help my game. So I feel like I need to continue to work. I feel like I'm a lot more ready now than I was at the end of the season, especially physically, mentally as well. I've been continuing to sharpen my game in terms of that. So I feel like I'm a lot closer than I was at the end of the season, but at the same time, it's up to them to determine if I am there or not. And if I'm not, it just means I'm going to have to continue to work with the coaches in Texas to get me there.
You said how much Doug Lister has to offer. How beneficial do you think it is to be working with a guy that played 16 years in the NHL, won 2 Stanley Cups, played a ton of years in a very difficult market to be sometimes in Vancouver, and then he played in New York City with the Rangers, and that's certainly no little cabbage patch to go and hang out in. How important is it to have a guy like him working with you on a daily basis?
It's invaluable, really. Every day you're able to go to the rink, you can learn something new, or some of the just little nuances of the game that he might see or he thinks of or he's been taught in his career is just it makes you that much more excited to go to the rink to learn something new. I think you have to have an open mind when you go to the rink and make sure that you're not kind of stuck in your habits, because these guys know what they're talking about, and you have to respect them for what they're able to do. And I think someone like Doug and Willie, with the credentials they have, they probably have the right to be a bit standoffish at times with players, but it's the complete opposite with them. I feel like they're very open. They love to talk to players. They love when you ask them questions. And I feel like the fact that I'm able to learn from someone like Doug is a huge advantage for me that a lot of other players don't have.
You also have a new signing in Dallas, Sergei Gonchar. Talk about a defensive legend in the NHL. You're excited to get to meet him and learn a little bit, maybe pick his brain in training camp?
I think so. I think we play different games, but at the same time, someone who's been in the league for this long, obviously he's been doing a number of things right. It's not just his offensive ability. I think from him, the stuff you can watch is just the little things he does in his game to keep things simple, because he's obviously had some longevity in order to be around this long. Obviously, I'd love to watch him take one time to see if I can take anything from that, or see how he's able to pass the puck. But at the same time, you just things away from the rink maybe you can learn from him, because he's been around for so long. Maybe little workout tips or things that he works on with his body that other guys don't, that's able to keep him in the game for so long.
Well, Cam, I really appreciate your insights. Just fantastic stuff. And I know that you're anxiously awaiting getting going here, although not probably ready to wave goodbye to summer yet. Thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And best of luck as you head to Dallas in a couple of weeks.
Thanks. Anytime, Owen.
Cameron Gaunce joining us here for episode 13 of Summer with the Stars. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will return with another episode next week. So long, everybody.